There's a company called Industrial Biotest Laboratories they actually were doing 35 to 40% of all toxicological tests in the country. And the Justice Department who investigated said, one person said, it was the place to go because everyone knew they'd get their products passed. How did they get their products passed? Because it was fraudulent. They did 22,000 toxicological studies, including 10,000 that were used for agricultural chemicals, 2,000 of which were considered the primary studies that resulted in allowing 325 insecticides and herbicides to move forward. And when they actually looked at the research over years and years, they found that maybe 10% were valid and the rest were fraud. And that most of those same pesticides continue to be sprayed on the fields. So what kind of fraud? In some studies, 80% of the rats died and were replaced. The rat evaluations of those that died didn't exist. They would sometimes cut and paste information from one study and put it into another. They do 2-year studies in 8 months. They talked about doing evaluations of the uteri of male rats. You know, they were completely incompetent. I read 20 pages of it yesterday in preparation for this talk. It was like, yeah, it was absolutely disgusting what was going on in this laboratory. And it turns out that 3 people went to jail, including Dr. Paul Wright, who had worked for Monsanto as a toxicologist, and then went to IBT to oversee some of the studies for Monsanto, then went back to Monsanto, and while he was back at Monsanto, he was being indicted and went to jail. And 11 of the 19 chronic toxicological studies of glyphosate were performed by IBT fraudulently. And even after that, when it was considered invalidated, more recently, a report by the EPA cited the IBT studies as reasons why it approved Roundup, not mentioning that it had been invalidated.